Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. This is your Manchester United visit to Southampton preview. Manchester United versus Southampton. I tell you what, first thing I'm going to say, I'm not going to mess about with this. I saw yesterday a predicted lineup for this game. I mean, who does a predicted lineup for? Well, actually, you can do a predicted lineup when you bloody like, but who takes it seriously 5 days before the game? But I will just say this, if that predicted lineup became true, and basically it's the starting 11 that played against Leeds, what I would say is this: you don't buy a couple of Ferraris, then put them in your garage when you're racing in a title race. You know, and ultimately, I'm not going to say that Lindelof and Dan James are a couple of Vauxhall Astras, but the reality is, we've bought a couple of Ferraris, we're in a race. How silly is it to just say, you know what, I'm going to leave you for later? What if we mess up and we can't get back into the race because of messing up? You've got to go. You buy these players to play them. They've trained all week. They're ready to go. Let's go. And the problem with not starting Varane is, if you don't start Varane, he doesn't come on as a sub. If you don't start Sancho, you can bring him on after half an hour if a certain player's not doing that well. But as a centre-back, you're only going to sub a centre-back if you're winning 10-0, which is possible against Southampton. Or, I don't think, to do badly, you'd have to be like 2 or 3-0 down, in which case the game's gone. So a centre-back, for me, is not a player that you feed back in. And here's the clip you really want. If Ollie decides to go with Lindelof over Varane, to be blunt, it's hypocritical, because we've seen Eric Bailly play very, very well. I can think of 4 or 5 occasions where Bailly's played well, and then as soon as Lindelof's fit, he's dropped him. Even though Bailly's played well in the last game, Lindelof comes in. So, and that's happened a lot over the last 18 months. So for me, Varane is better than Lindelof. And if we suddenly start feeling sentimental, oh, it's not fair to drop him, he played well against Leeds. Well, you did it with Eric Bailly. And I think Eric Bailly was better than Lindelof. So, you know, I think Ollie will play Varane because Varane is our best centre-back. He's one of the best centre-backs in the world. And he's shown before that he doesn't get sentimental when it's about ability. And at the end of the day, Varane is better than Lindelof, and we've got better chances of winning. And that takes me straight into Southampton. Let me talk about Southampton before I talk about United, and we'll go to the tactics board in a minute. But in fact, we can go to the tactics board right now. So, if you think about Southampton and they knock this ball in here. Now, against Everton, they played with 2 up front. They played Armstrong and Shea Adams, right? Shea Adams is a very combative player. Armstrong's very quick. They've just bought him from the Championship. Now, if that's Lindelof, I don't think they'll play with 2 up front against us, but you never know. If they play with 2 up front against us, we better be playing Varane, because Varane is physical and fast, and Lindelof is neither of those things. Even if they play just Armstrong or they just play Shea Adams will attach himself to Lindelof. I know that's Varane at the moment, but he will. He won't attach himself to Maguire. And Armstrong will attach himself to Lindelof, because Armstrong knows he can beat Lindelof in a race, and Shea Adams knows he can beat Lindelof in a physical battle. So look, whether Varane is better than Lindelof, and he is, actually, you know, if we want to play with a higher line, and this ball's going to be in here that Varane can deal with and Lindelof can't. So look, Southampton definitely will cause us a problem if they manage to get the ball up to Shea Adams and Armstrong and they get up against Lindelof. So play Varane. It's as simple as that. But we'll come back to that in a minute. I want to talk to you about Southampton for a moment. Now, Southampton lost 3-1 to Everton last week. They went 1-0 up. They went 1-0 up because of a defensive error between the Everton centre-backs. It was Michael Keane, he lost control of the ball. Shea Adams fell, didn't fall. He slipped Armstrong in and he scored. The interesting thing about that game is that Everton dominated them in the second half. They scored all 3 goals in the second half. But even in the first half, they had a couple of good chances. But the interesting thing about that game for me is that when I looked at it, Southampton actually had 52% of the possession. And I think Everton played about 333 passes, but Southampton played 370. And I've heard a lot of people saying this week, you know, Southampton will sit back, they'll play a low block, and United will just have to try and beat the low block. I mean, they might do that. But to be fair, the Southampton way and Hasenhüttl's way is possession-based, and they do, you know, like to move the ball quickly and try and get at the opposition. This is why they've lost 9-0 a couple of times in the last few years. They do leave themselves a little bit open. So I'm not convinced that, you know, they are going to play deep. They might not play 2 up front, but I think that they will try and get on the ball and play at us. Ward-Prowse was brilliant against Everton, by the way. I know other teams are trying to get hold of him, but he is a very good player. Romu started. He's very combative. I like Denny Pro, however you pronounce it, off the left-hand side. I think he's a really good player. And obviously they're interesting up front. But where you can really hurt Southampton, and you always could hurt Southampton, is because of the way they play. They do tend to get exploited at the back. And we saw that with Everton last weekend. Now, is it Salasul and I think it was Stevens were their centre-backs. If you look at the 3 goals they conceded, the first goal was horrific. I don't know what Salasu was doing. He sort of could have headed it away and then tried to play offside. It was a mess. The third goal from Calvert-Lewin was another cross where both centre-backs just don't do a great job. The second goal was Decore, which was a great goal, and there was a lot of Southampton players back. There's not a lot you can do about it, but straight in the top corner. But 2 of those goals were definitely down to defensive errors, and I think in the first half, Calvert-Lewin had a cross again that he got there ahead of the centre-back. So, look, maybe Hasenhüttl will mix it up. I know Bednarek was on the bench and they have got other options, but I think Southampton you can get at them, and I think in relation to this game, as much as we could lose it, I think the interesting thing is that last season we were 2-0 down at half-time and we still won 3-2. And again, they're 1-0 up at Everton and they lose 3-1. What that shows to me is that you're never out of the game with Southampton. Even if you go a goal behind or 2 goals behind, you're never out of the game. They are open at the back and they're 24/7. They're like a Tesco supermarket at a garage. 24/7, they're open. They don't shut. And I think that defence at Southampton is open 24/7 or for 90 minutes. So we definitely can get at them, and I think there's goals in it. I am a little bit concerned. I mean, you look at the players that they've got, and they're weaker than they were. They've lost one centre back, Vestergaard, to Leicester. Obviously, Danny Ings has gone to Villa. I think they're weaker than they were last year, but then they're a little bit unknown. I mean, Bertrand's gone as well. Hasenhüttl is a good coach. He's obviously doing it with lesser players now because he's lost some of his better players, but they could be dangerous. I was speaking to somebody today. I was up at Solihull Moors, actually, and they've got a massive game against Wrexham at the weekend. And Wrexham have now been taken over by the Hollywood owners, haven't they? And I was saying, you know what, though? Premier League weekend, opening weekend, relevant to United, 10 games, 7 home wins. And in the 3 away wins, that was because the 3 away teams were better, like comfortably better on the pitch. In the other games, you had teams like Leeds getting smashed. I mean, some people would say that's not a surprise, but Arsenal beaten by Brentford, City beaten by Spurs, just to name a few. And I think the home crowd had such a big impact on that. Now remember, we're not the home team against Southampton. That's their first game in front of a crowd for 18 months. It's emotional. It's exciting. We saw it at Old Trafford. We saw it at Brentford. We saw it at Spurs. It's an emotional, exciting day for those fans of Southampton, not for United. And Southampton to them is important as United is to us. There will be something going on in that game. And we've got to be careful of that because we're going to experience as well. The same way Leeds did, the same way Man City did. Leeds never turned up. Man City never turned up. We've got to make sure we turn up. And I don't think it's about fitness. And I don't think it's about ability because we know we've got those two things. I think this might be a bit of a psychological battle. It's not. It never normally is. And it won't be in a month or two. But this is going to be the first time that we've played in front of a massive crowd that's going to be against us. And our away support's fantastic. And there's a very big chance our away support will outsing Southampton. But it will be an away game for us. And there will be more home fans. And it'd be just interesting what our mentality's like. I think we've got a strong mentality, but it is a challenge to go and play our first away game against Southampton in front of a crowd that's going to be mainly Southampton fans. And I would just factor it in. And I'd keep an eye on that across the Premier League weekend again. Will we see another weekend where the home teams are picking up? And look, home teams always should pick up more points, but I think in this situation, it's going to take a few weeks for teams to get used to. Home crowds are great because they love you. Away crowds aren't because there's more of them and they don't want you to win. So let's just see. I think Southampton are a potential concern, but in a 90-minute game, I think the great thing about Southampton is they can go 1 or 2-0 up and you still can get back into it. I'm confident we're going to win this game. I'm very confident we're going to win this game. I think as a score prediction, and I know it's a little bit early to say that, and it's always very difficult to do a score prediction, but I do think we will win it, and I'd probably go with something like 3-1 or something like that. I think we'd be comfortable. But I wouldn't be surprised if we did another 5. I wouldn't be surprised if Bruno got a couple and Pogba got a couple of assists again. I think the thing about United at the moment is, and it might just be the first 6 or 7 games where we do it and then we hit a bump and we don't win again for 4 or 5 games. But I think with United, with the fixtures, with the competition for places, there's a buzz around United at the moment. And I think we'll take it into that game. And look, Bruno looks so good at the moment. Pogba looks so good. Sancho, this could be the game that he starts, and it should be, which I'll talk about in a minute. Greenwood's buzzing. McTominay and Fred are buzzing about. We've got 2 very good fullbacks. We've got Maguire, and he should be playing with Varane. De Gea in goal wasn't even really tested against Leeds, but when he was, he looked sharp. There isn't a weakness in that United side. And in fact, it goes back to what I was talking about before. This is another reason why Sancho and Varane should play, because they are, without a shadow of a doubt, world-class talents. And, you know, you look at that team on my left there, and look, I know people are going to say, well, I'd rather have Cavani up front, and I'd rather have a holding midfielder with Van der Beek, or put Pogba in there and put Rashford on the left, or Martial. You can make changes, but on form, I think Fred and McTominay deserve to start, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But I think, you know, you take James out, you bring Sancho in. I think James was one of the players that didn't really perform that well against Leeds. Lindelof did play well, but Varane's on a different level to him and allows us to play further up that pitch. That team, to me, doesn't look like it's got a loss in it. I think it could lose against a Chelsea, it could lose against a Liverpool, it could lose against a City, maybe even a Spurs away or something like that. But Southampton away, that team to me doesn't look like it can lose in a 90-minute game. Not unless something silly happens like a red card or a dodgy decision, or, you know, 7 or 8 players play poorly. And I think at the moment I just don't see that happening. I comfortably expect a win for United. So let's go back to the tactics board here. So, look, that is the team as we think it would start. I don't know, I've still got Varane as a number 4, but which he obviously isn't. But let's move the players about a bit, how I think we would play if we go with the 11 that I've gone with. And look, ultimately, I think in this game, with Sancho there, you're basically going to have a front 4. McTominay's going to be able to push, Fred's going to be able to push, he's going to be able to push, he's going to be able to push. And this is what the new world under Varane would be. I'd expect to see a lot of this in this game. You know, maybe the ball is with Fred, but that's our natural position when we're on the attack. And when you're on the attack with something like that, and I don't know why Jadon Sancho's moved. I don't want him to move. When you're on the attack like that, look at the options you've got. Look at the options. And as soon as you're knocking the ball into any of these 3, it's danger time. It's danger field, because he can be one touch, he can be one touch, he can be one touch. And, you know, you've got Luke Shaw who's going to bomb on. You've got Wan-Bissaka who's going to bomb on. Past those lot. I just think the options, if we keep that tempo up, we're going to be moving Southampton around so much. And I think that's what United can and will do on Sunday. And that's why, for me, Dan James doesn't suit a game like this, because I don't think Southampton are going to be playing a high line for Dan James to be meeping in. And I think Dan James obviously is going to have a role this season, whether people like it or not, he is. But not in a game like this. I think we saw this a lot of times last season. You'd see Dan James have a good game, and then we'd play him against someone like this, and it'd be like, there's no space in behind. There's no space for him to run into. And look, Dan James with the ball into feet with 5 or 6 players around him isn't effective. This is what we bought Jadon Sancho for. Again, you know, you play Lindelof, you're probably going to have to drop back a little bit. Well, we've got Varane, that's why we bought him. Play higher up the pitch. You play Dan James, you probably nullify your right wing. Play Sancho, that's another creator. I just don't see, for me, why you wouldn't play Varane and Sancho. They are fit and they are ready. I'm not having any of this nonsense that... And also, let me just say this as well. If you don't start Varane, let's use Varane as the example, right? We can't start Varane because he's not ready. Nonsense. Why is he going to be any more ready in a week? He's not playing any bloody football. You've got to play games to be ready. So you've got to throw him in to be ready. If you don't start Varane against Southampton and we win 4-1... why would you start him against Wolves? Because it's the same thing. Well, you can't drop Lindelof. He's played 2 games and we've won. Just get it out of the way. Some people might think it's unfair, but get it out of the way. Same with Dan James. I think the Sancho for James thing is actually far easier, because James didn't actually play that well against Leeds. But for me, it's the same thing. It's the same thing over and over again. It is the fact that Varane and Sancho were bought into this club, and they are now two of our best players. They're Ferraris. Don't put them in the garage in a race. Put him on the bloody track and let him go. And we will be a better team for it. But The big thing about Varane and Sancho is they're not just signings, because they're significant signings in the way that we play. Varane, quick, good in the air, physical, experienced, winner, pushes high up the pitch, better than any other centre-back we've got. Sancho, creative, got assists coming out of his ears, can score a goal, can be part of the build-up, plays off the right. We've not got that. They are problem solvers. They are players that come in, and of course any signing should make you better, but these signings are very unique in the fact that they are designated spots and they tick the box in it. On a right-hand side, we didn't just want a right winger. We wanted a right winger who creates and can be involved in the build-up play and is intelligent. Yes, Sancho. At centre-back, we wanted a centre-back who was quick, experienced, and ideally world-class. Tick all the boxes. This is what they are. They're on a different level to what we've got, and they're in both positions, and that's why we must start them. There's no excuse. We can't stutter. And I'll say it again. Ollie didn't stutter when Bailly played well and he dropped him for Lindelof the next game. Why stutter now? It doesn't make any sense. I think we're romanticising. I think there are people. There is some sentimentality at play here, where people are like, you can't change a winning team. Winners change winning teams. That's what they do, and I think United will. So look, I think Southampton, just be wary. They did play with two up front. I don't think they'll do that against United, but if they did, you'd have to pick Varane, because I wouldn't fancy Lindelof against two. And also, they had a lot of possession away to Everton, and they're not going to change their core principles of how they play. Southampton like the ball. They like to keep the ball, and they like to move the ball quickly. It does leave them open. It's a 90-minute game, and I think there'll be a lot of goals in it. And I think we will be the benefactor of those goals. I can see it being 3-4-1. It could be a silly score again. So, you know what? Get some United players in your fancy Premier League team, because I think it's going to be a big score. I think we'll win. I'm going to go for 3-1 just to be a little bit respectful. But as I said, let's not get carried away with ourselves. Every game, we need to be like Mourinho when he was at Chelsea. Every game, you look at it, you compartmentalise it, and you break down the season. 3 points at home against Leeds. If you want to be a title challenger, you've got to get 3 points against Leeds. 3 points against Southampton away. If you want to be a title challenger, that's a 3-pointer. So's Wolves away. If we're playing at Stamford Bridge, you might go, you know what, I want to win, but a point, as long as we don't lose. But this game at the weekend, you've got to win it. Let's focus in on that. Let's win this game. Let's not also forget, there's a crowd in there for the first time in 18 months. We're the away crowd, we're the away team facing that home crowd, and it might be a challenge. Mentally, that might be a challenge. It might not. Let's see how it gets on. Thanks everyone for watching. Smash a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Get your comments in below. You might have different thoughts. You might have different thoughts about how this is going to go. You might think it's going to be a tighter game. You might pick different people. The one thing I didn't talk about was the midfield. And I really didn't talk about it, not because I wouldn't prefer Matic and Donny. I just don't think there's a case to drop Fred and McTominay. And I don't think Southampton will play the low block everyone thinks they will. I think it will be a bit more like Leeds. Not as open, but they do play open. And I don't think you would drop Fred and McTominay for that. Thanks for watching. I'll speak to you all soon.